Good morning. Today is Good Friday in the Western Church. It's the first day that Jesus lays in the grave in the Johannine tradition. So, the earliest Christian holiday is Easter, and it's the first one they have a big fight about around 180 over the date. Where do you date Easter? The East and the West want to date it differently depending upon their attachment to the Jewish Passover. Christmas will pop in around the 400s. And it takes a while for a Holy Week liturgy to develop, but you have that by late antiquity. And then, of course, the seasons will begin to be added and these kinds of things. And you have a church year, you have a calendar year. I'm going to observe this in my next talk on the fourth gospel when I get to that. The three main pillars of Judaism are Torah, temple, and land. In John 2, Jesus cleanses the temple. In John 4, he tells the Samaritan woman it ain't about mountains. And in John 5, he's going to break the Sabbath. I think it's important, and if you listen to the first part of the Samaritan woman video, you know that my argument is that for Jesus, there is no sacred place. And what this means is there is no sacred time. Space and time belong together. Space, place, time belong together. There's no sacred time. There is no sacred place. Every moment, every step you take upon the earth is sacred. Life is in this sense, filled with the presence of God. Not sacred in the Girardian sense, but filled with the presence of God. Every moment. And that's obviously going to include the greatest moment of all, the crucifixion moment. Lots of moments strung together. 6 hours worth. So in one sense, today is not a special day. In fact, it's a day that should remind us that we continue to do this thing of victimizing others. That's what it should remind us of. But it doesn't do that because we have covered it over. It's like a ship that's sunk to the bottom of an ocean and it's just got barnacles and silt and dirt and layers of gunk, and it can barely be seen. The gospel can barely be recognized in Christianity. Good Friday is completely misunderstood. What's really, really sad about it being misunderstood today is that the Protestant tradition, particularly since the late 16th century, influenced by Calvin, of course, will turn Good Friday into an absolutely Christian version of ancient sacrifice. It's a perfectly Christian version of what we did as human beings when we were cannibalizing each other and believing that we were taking the divinity of victims into ourselves, and we were learning to cooperate, and we started making tools, and then we had rules and taboos, and then we had rituals enacted, and then we became human beings and culture, but everything that you have today comes right out of that. And all Calvin did was call it Christian. And Protestants have been doing that ever since. And we know, there's an enormous influence of Renaissance humanism on the reformers, and there are those who are willing to begin challenging all manner of church doctrine and dogma at that point. Take Servetus, for instance, and his challenge of the doctrine of the Trinity. For those of you that don't know, Calvin wrote to Servetus and said, "Don't come to Geneva, dude. They're just going to string you up here." So those of you who think that Calvin killed Servetus, you've got to know your history about the story. Has nothing to do with anything, but I just wanted to exonerate Brother Jean for a moment on that score, at least. But he provided for us a framework that has turned the Holy Friday, Good Friday, into this absolutely a blatant sacrificial event. God's wrath must be placated. God is angry as hell, and just humans deserve to die, and so Jesus takes our sins on himself. And this is how we were all born again. So most of us entered into Christendom. Most of us Christians, we thought that this horrible thing about God and hell and damnation and everything else, and Jesus took all that, man. God poured it on him. And if we believe that, man, we're good as gold. And we bought into a deus ex machina. We bought into a theology of glory. We bought into a sacrificial hermeneutic. We bought into a false epistemology. Everything at that point, the whole thing, lock, stock, and caboodle, was wrong. And so when the humanists began reacting against these dogmas and doctrines, and you had this kind of, particularly in the 1600s, of course, you've got folks like Descartes and others that are doing this thinking outside the box, Semler and New Testament. You have really, for the first time, this challenge to this sacrificial view of God. People going, well, if that's who God is, we'd kind of prefer no God. And then you have the Enlightenment and the rise of atheism. And the thing is both modernism and postmodernism as well. I'm not sure that we are postmodern. I think postmodernism is modernity spun into chaos, really. It's kind of the end effect of modernity. It's what you get with modernity. And it's not pretty. At any rate, the liberals rightly reject this sacrificial God. But you see, when it comes to Good Friday, they both do the same thing. They both assume the death of Jesus is sacrificial. And it isn't. Neither side of Protestantism has any idea that the death of Jesus is our salvation. Truly our salvation. Not in a sacrificial mode, as let's just call them the Protestant Orthodox. And that includes the evangelicals, the fundamentalists, all the sects, the charismatics, every last one of them. You might as well throw in there 99% of the Anabaptists and the Mennonites, because they still drink from the theological well of fundamentalism and evangelicalism. So let's just throw basically the entire conservative Protestant tradition right into that camp right there. Okay, they believe in penal substitutionary sacrificial hermeneutic atonement, man. Bam, bam, that's it. God was pissed. Jesus took God's punches and hits and anger and vileness and bitterness and just soaked it all in, and he's the good guy. We like Jesus. And then you got the liberals. Well, that's all bullshit. Nothing happened that day. Why did Jesus die? Well, empire killed Jesus. Jesus' death is about empire. And they go to who killed Jesus? Was it the Jews? Was it the Romans? There's all these debates that go on, and then you got all this, kind of post-Holocaust backlash. Well, the Jews weren't really involved. It was the Romans, and the creed does say he suffered under Pontius Pilate. The creed does not mention the Jews, and that's important. But in all these debates, what happens is the liberals then turn this important piece of history into some kind of theological marker, and they go, well, yeah, empire killed Jesus. God didn't do anything in Jesus. Jesus was a prophet. He was a good man, and society killed him, because they just, for whatever reason, they didn't like his economic message. He was too communist for them, and they do all that typical liberal social justice stuff where they can justify themselves that they're living this discipleship life when they're really not. And they turn Good Friday then into this non-event. It's a non-event. And that's why most of them, and one of the reasons it's a non-event is because you go to liberal Christianity, Jesus isn't raised from the dead. There's no resurrection. None. And when you have no resurrection, you got no meaning for the cross. Or I should say, you have no ability to interpret the cross. The cross has its own meaning, but you have no ability to interpret it. And liberals, progressives, they're all stuck out there going, well, it's all about spirituality. It's all about love. It's all about, let's get together with all our different brothers and sisters and find out the good in each other. Man, they are just playing the 1960s hippy-dippy game all over again. We tried that. It didn't work. It just produced the yuppies of the 80s, and now the wealthy and their children, the wealthy millionaires and billionaires. Come on. You can go read Saving Paradise by Rita Nakashima Brock, and I forget the co-author. And they want to make a case Jesus was never on a cross in art form in early Christianity, and until you get to the era of Charlemagne, 800, and the building of the Holy Roman Empire. There's no pictographs, artwork, or anything of Jesus hanging on a cross. And so, therefore, the early church didn't believe in the death of Jesus as salvific. But they had this whole argument, that it's all about flowers and goodness, but it's awful work, actually. But the failure of that work is to turn the death of Jesus into nothing in a scholarly form. And so people look at the death of Jesus and they go, well, does it mean anything? The best rebuttal to that work, of course, comes from Mark Heim, who wrote Saved from Sacrifice. He published an essay in Contagion some years back analyzing what's known as the Brescia casket. It's a small ossuary, but it's got panels that tell a story around it, and it uses a number of the prophets in those stories to depict a scapegoating mechanism. And Heim is able to, of course, show how that's a reference to Jesus' death. And there you have it. The early church did use the death of Jesus in artwork. Maybe not a Christ on a cross, okay? And one of the beautiful things I should say about Mark Heim's book is he's able to incorporate all three major cross patterns: Christ, the dead Christ on the cross, the risen Christ on the cross in the Eastern traditions, and the empty cross of the Protestant tradition. So read Saved from Sacrifice if you want to read an excellent book on reading the Bible from a mimetic theory perspective. But when we come to this Good Friday thing, we have to be careful, because we're going to miss what it's really fundamentally about. It's about every Sunday when we break bread. It's about every relationship we're in where we're persecuted, or somebody screams or yells at us or says an unkind word. It's in every moment of our lives, in our existence, in relation to ourselves. Good Friday raises only one great big question. How did Jesus interpret his own death? And he interpreted his own death in terms of forgiveness. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And as I've written in that essay in What the Facebook, he separates action and intention at that point. And then he calls us to do the same. If anyone wants to be my disciple, they have to carry their cross. When people get pissed off at you, this is what Good Friday's about. You enter Good Friday. People get mad at you. They say an unkind word. They accuse you. Boom, boom, boom. You are now in the world of Jesus, the world of false accusation, the world of mimetic conflict. That's Jesus' world. Now you get it. Now you're there. How you respond is everything. You can respond like Abel. I mean, for crying out loud, 99% of Christianity does. Every Sunday. They're told they're drinking the blood of Jesus, but then they turn around and act like they just drank the blood of Abel. Okay? That's what Christianity understands about Good Friday. That's what the world understands about Good Friday because of Christianity. It really isn't about forgiveness. Or if it's about forgiveness, it's about forgiveness with 1,000 conditions attached. Good Friday is about every moment of our lives, people. There is no more sacred time or space or place. We exist in Good Friday. We exist in the cross. Our lives are cruciform. The path we walk, the discipleship path, is our Via Dolorosa. Every moment of every day, we die. We let go, we surrender. We let Papa just take us on the journey of our life, wherever it leads. From the moment we wake up, till lunch, till dinner, till bedtime. And we do it all again the next day. And today's the only day we have. And it's Good Friday, and tomorrow will be Good Friday, and the next day will be Good Friday. Easter Sunday will be Good Friday. Easter Monday will be good. Every day is Good Friday. Every day is about forgiveness. Every day is about recognizing people are clueless. They're not acting rationally. You have to understand this about the human species. We call ourselves Homo sapiens. We aren't. We're Homo religiosus. We're religious people. We do not. And I'm talking the most brilliant scientific atheists in the world, even the Stephen Hawkings. Come on. And all those who are part of this group that went from some sort of evangelicalism into deconstruction, as they improperly called it, but they went into the desert of criticism, as Ricoeur calls it. And they're quite content there, and they think everybody needs to stay there, and they think it's the end of the line, and it ain't. I'm telling those folks, come back to faith. Come back to trusting Papa. The liberals don't have a hold on the truth. Science is not truth. Science is information. So today's Good Friday. It's good because on one day in space and time and history, God declared all space, time, and history forgiven. On one day in space, time, and history, God declared all space, time, and history forgiven. Father, forgive them, all of them. Not just some of them. He didn't say, Father, forgive the elect. Father, forgive just my disciples. Father, forgive those 3 guys, but not those 2. No, it was Father, forgive them, all of them. Can you imagine what the world would look like if Christianity took Jesus seriously enough to drop their swords, their rhetorical swords, their mental swords, their physical swords, their spiritual swords, their psychological swords? Drop all of their swords. All Christians around the world dropped their swords, took up their cross, and forgave, and forgave, and forgave. Sure, they would die, just like their master. And they would trust their Papa to raise them from the dead. Can you do that? Can you do that? That's the path you're called to. Good Friday, every day, every moment. A theologia crucis, a theology of the cross, lived, breathed, so that when Easter comes and the shalom message comes, it's the obverse side. Forgiveness produces peace, and forgiveness is the only thing that will ever produce peace, not justice. Justice doesn't produce peace, people. You got to get this through your heads. Justice isn't part of an economy of exchange. All social justice is embedded in economies of exchange. Justice doesn't bring peace. This creates a new top. The bottom becomes the top becomes the bottom. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. When has it ever changed? I mean, come on, the proletariat took over in Russia back in 1917, and we have a peaceful nation of egalitarianism over there, don't we? And Cuba, right? Cuba's good at that. How about China? China really succeeded in the communist experiment, right? They don't have any starvation. They don't have any poor. There's no hierarchy. There's no totalitarianism there. And China is there. Oh, no. Capitalism's a great success. Oh, sure. People, don't tie yourselves to these views of justice that have embedded economies of exchange that just suck you in and suck the life right out of you. There's only one way to peace, and that's through forgiveness. That's the third way. That's the real way. Drop your swords. Love your neighbor as yourself. Forgive them as you want to be forgiven. Judge them as you want to be judged by God. It's that simple. So live today with the love of God in your heart, the kind of love that Jesus had in his heart. as he hung for 6 hours on great difficulty breathing and in certainly great physical pain, trusting his Papa. And then we wait. Cheers.